So, I came here today to share with you some of the experiences I had and the insights I've gained while leading a project I co-founded 3 years ago called SafeShore, which is a psychedelic harm reduction project that, together with Igal Tartakovsky, I am leading in Israel. And during the events we attend, we support people who are going through extremely intense experiences. And this led me to the realization that what is actually happening is that these people, whether they're conscious of it or not, they're going through an initiation or even a rite of passage. And the term rite of passage was coined by the French anthropologist Arnold van Gennep, who researched the basis of characteristic patterns in the order of ceremonies. And what he discovered is that there is a threefold pattern that underlines transition rites from all across the globe. And he named the different stages as separation, liminality, and incorporation. So if we take, for example, the rites that mark the transitions of boys from being a child to being an adult male, this will be the separation of the boy from his family and tribe. The liminality will be where the ceremony and the initiation actually takes place. And if successful, he will be incorporated back to his society as an adult male. Now, Joseph Campbell, who wrote this very famous book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, he was deeply inspired by Van Gennep as well as by the work of Jung. And to make a very long story short, he showed that the same threefold pattern, which he renamed to departure, initiation, and return, he showed that it emerges from the stories of different mythological heroes from all ages and continents. Now, something that might shed some light on the universal or archetypal nature of this pattern, of this journey, I believe it lies in the fact that each and every one of us went through a journey on his way here to this life through the process of birth, which, as Grof showed, begins when we are suspended in the what he called the amnionic universe, in the unitive consciousness of our mother's womb. And then we're separated from it during the onset of labor, when the uterus is contracting against the cervix, into what Grof called the cosmic oppression. And we're there until we're pushed towards the light at the end of the tunnel through the birth canal, and then incorporated into this life as biologically independent human beings. Now, a little word about set and setting, as many in this conference already said. So the mindset refers to the mindset of the person. The set refers to the mindset of the person, his personality structure, his mood at the time, his intentions, his expectations. And the setting refers to the physical and social environment in which the experience takes place. So this might refer to whether the experience takes place indoor or outdoor, at a festival or at home, with friends or alone. And if you're with friends, do you really trust them or not? Now, another interesting concept that is very important for the psychedelic experience is the issue of collective set and setting. And as Ido Hartogzon, who is an Israeli researcher, wrote in this MAPS bulletin, collective set and setting represents the social and cultural context in which the psychedelic experience takes place, and which frames the individual set and setting in the most intimate of ways. Now, as I guess all of you know, Israel has an obligatory military service. And about 10 to 15% of the people we meet in the events and parties are during their military service. And about half of them are between the ages of 18 and 24, meaning that they're no more than 3 years after their military service. So you can imagine that this is something that affects their psychedelic experience, and something that is really living within each and every one of us through the collective set and setting. Now, we're about to embark on the hero's journey, and I'm going to use this 12-stage model that was created by Christopher Vogler, who is actually a Hollywood scriptwriter. So this is the ordinary world, and Dorothy is about to embark on her journey to Oz. And in the context of the psychedelic experience, this will be the person's ordinary state of consciousness, whatever that means. And the call to adventure is the next stage, and this will be the call to consume a psychoactive substance. Of course, this call can come from within, it can come from a friend, it can come from a guy you don't know in the middle of the night in the dance floor. refusal of the summons, as Campbell writes, converts the adventure into its negative. So I'm sure most of you at least know this moment in the roller coaster when the seatbelt is clicking on you and you understand that there's no way back. So the same when we consume a psychoactive substance, after we take it, it will have its effect regardless of our wishes. And this is the point where we really encourage people not to resist the sensations that are rising and to meet the content that is presented to them through the psychedelic experience with curiosity. Now, meeting the mentor. The first encounter of the hero journey is with a protective figure. Now, we do our best in the events we attend to welcome the people into the event. So two of us are standing at the gates when they open the gates and there's all this river of people coming in. Two of us are standing with the Safe Shore t-shirts and handing out flyers and basically raising the awareness of our presence in the event so people know that they have someone to turn to. And I'm just going to quickly translate to you this Hebrew flyer. It says, "Welcome. It is important for us that you know that during the whole festival there is a safe space operating for whoever experiences challenges or difficulties. Our team wears white shirts saying Safe Shore on them, and you can approach us at any time, in any place, and in any condition or situation." It's the same word. Our space is located in the alternative zone, and we would love if you can refer to us, anyone who might need support or guidance. And of course, this is our phone number. Crossing the first threshold. Now, this is the next stage, and this is where the person starts to feel the effects of the substance that he took, the onset of the drug. Now, here we're moving to a little bit more sensitive territory. I'm going to share with you some of the experiences we went through, and I really welcome you to see how you feel and how your body reacts to the stories I'm about to share. So, I will start by saying that I feel that the word ally describes beautifully the work that we do. Because although we call ourselves sitters, we spend quite a lot of time not actually sitting down. And we're accompanying people to wherever they need to go. And it might be to the toilets, which is not always an easy task. And it might be to the medics. And it might be to deep in the lake. And it might be all the way home, since we're a small country after all. And so an example for someone who needed to understand who can he trust at the moment we met him was a guy that we heard was handcuffed in the police camp outside the festival we attended 3 years ago. So I heard it on the radio, and they didn't say anything about him taking any substance. They just said that someone is handcuffed, and I could assume he could use our help. So I called Oshrit, one of our sitters, to come with me, and we went over there. And by the time we got there, there was a guy held with his face on the ground with two guards, which actually had a police cap saying police, so the guy was thinking they're police, although they were only guards. I knew them anyway. So they were holding him very strongly on the ground with their knees on his ribs, like he couldn't move anywhere. And of course, I just wanted to get him out of there as quickly as possible, as it seemed like he's under the influence. I couldn't say exactly what. I was assuming it is LSD and alcohol. I was actually right, but this is not the important thing. So I wanted to get him out of this situation. So I asked them if I can interfere. And they said, no, back away, he's biting people. He tried to bite. And it didn't seem like he can move his head or anything else anywhere. So I felt comfortable enough to lay on the ground next to him while he was held down. And I tried to ask him what happened and to invite him to the dome, but he wasn't even hearing what I'm saying, and he was just cursing me in Russian, which I do not understand. So I asked one of the guards, what's his name, and let's say that he said that his name is Johnny. So I realized that the guards are becoming very impatient and that all they want to do is just to throw this guy into the police car and take him to a hospital or to be arrested or whatever. So I felt I have very few seconds to be useful for the situation, so I just put my hand gently on his face and I told him, let's say his name is Johnny. So I said, Johnny, listen to me, you have exactly two options right now. One is that you're going to find a way to calm yourself down and let us take you to a quiet dome where you can rest on a mattress, have a drink, have something to eat, and rest there. Or we will just have to go and you'll be left here with the guards. And I didn't even know if he's hearing me, but he immediately calmed down and he found a way to calm himself down and he nodded for agreement, and then the guards helped us take him to the dome. Now this is of course a long story, but I'm going to cut it here just to emphasize the point. 2 points actually. One is that even when we think people cannot hear us, most of the times they can. And that a person, when he understands that he has an option and that you're not against him and that I'm not a police and not a guard, so they're very willing to cooperate. I didn't notice that I clicked it. So approach to the innermost cave is the next stage. And this is the stage where the hero, instead of conquering or conciliating the power of the threshold, is swallowed into the unknown and would appear to have died. Now, some of the people we meet are really in a danger of losing their life, unfortunately. And although I'm not a doctor, I want to talk to you about something very important, which is the biological mechanisms of actions of MDMA. Now, this is really useful and important information. So, one of the metabolites of MDMA is called HMMA. And what HMMA does is that it induces the secretion of AVP. AVP is also called the vasopressin, and it's a hormone that signals the kidney to retain fluids. Now, another effect the MDMA has is that through the serotonergic nervous pathways, it creates the feeling of very intense thirst. So what is happening when a person is not taking any liquids or not going to pee at all and drinking constantly, he's lowering the sodium concentration in his body fluids. And when the sodium concentration in your blood is low enough, you get into a state which is called hyponatremia. Now, hyponatremia can show various symptoms, and there's different types of hyponatremia. So again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm encouraging each and every one of you to consult a doctor in case you recognize these symptoms, or medics, because there's not only one type of hyponatremia, but the main symptoms of hyponatremia will be a feeling of confusion and disorientation. It can be nausea and vomiting. It can be headache. It can be severe weakness when the person gets to a state where he can't even stand up. And I've seen, so when a person is coming into our dome and he's telling us that he took some MDMA or that he don't know what he took, we make sure to ask him, what is the last time you went to pee? And if he doesn't remember, we're not giving him constantly more and more and more water, because we can really put him in a danger of losing his life. And I've seen it before that people who are hyponatremic spent hours in hospitals, in the medics camp, and the doctors and the medics didn't really know what's going on. And this is not the first thing that is running into their head, oh, I should check his blood sodium levels. So I encourage each and every one of you who is seeing someone who is having some involuntary movements, muscle twitches, seizures, of course, feeling completely disoriented. And I know of people who experience states like this from 150 milligrams of MDMA. So you don't need to take too much to get to this place. And women are also more sensitive to it because of interactions with estrogen, etc., etc. But it is very important to remind the medics, if medics or doctors are being involved, to remind them that there is a possibility that the person's sodium levels are low, and then a simple hypertonic solution with an IV can save his life. Now, as you can see, the ordeal stage is on the exact opposite for the ordinary world, which means that hopefully from now on things are going to get better and the person is going to start journeying towards the ordinary world where he left from. So about 3 years ago, we were in a festival. And we received a call on the radio that there is a guy who is going through a crisis on the beach of the lake that the event was in. And of course, two of our sitters immediately went over there. And by the time they got there, they saw a guy who was punching the ground until his fists were bleeding. So they sat next to him and they asked him to please stop punching the ground, and he agreed. And they spent the next hour and a half with him trying to understand what he's experiencing. And he just kept saying again and again, I just want to go to swim, I just want to go to swim, I just want to go to swim. Now, obviously, he could have gone to swim before they got there. And of course, now because they're there and they see that he's not in the best shape to swim, so they asked him not to do so, and he agreed. So after an hour and a half that he is just saying that he wants to go to swim, he told them that he's actually a soldier. And that 4 months before, he went together with two friends from his unit in the army. They went to a territory that they were strictly forbidden from entering. And when they entered this place, hostile forces started shooting at them. And he lost two of his friends in front of his eyes and received a bullet in the shoulder. And 4 months after, during the event, when he took LSD and MDMA and had a few drinks together, this event just overwhelmed him and put him in a situation where he was so overwhelmed by shame and grief and guilt from surviving this, that all he wanted to do is to swim into the lake until he will have no energy to swim back and that way kill himself. Now, after he shared this story, he cried and they hugged him and he felt much, much better, and he immediately started thanking the sitters for listening to him and for holding the space for him, and he agreed to come to the dome. And once he arrived to the dome, we spent a few more hours with him, and we invited some of his best friends who were in the event to understand what's going on. And this is, of course, a very, very long story, but it ended up very well with him realizing what he has gone through, and he invited one of the sitters to meet him again to discuss more after the festival, their experience together, and he decided not to take it, at least by the time that the sitter met him, he decided not to take it to further psychotherapy, but this is, of course, his decision, and all we can do is let him know that we're here for him if he wants to talk to us. Now, this is a bit of a sharp change after this story, but this is how life goes, I guess. So this is the reward stage. And in mythological stories, the reward can be the elixir of life. It can be a sword. It can be the princess. It can be many things. And in the context of the psychedelic experience, the reward will be any insight or realization which the person manages to integrate into his daily life and actually brings into action. So I would say that in the context of the story I just told, his reward was that he realized that he can share this experience with people who will not judge him for it, and that he has the space to actually share it. And he also got the reward of getting to share one of his best friends with this story and having someone who can be in touch with this part of his experience in life during his life after the festival. And as Lucifer is writing in Heroic Dose-Induced Nightmare in Heroid Experience Vaults, minutes after I came back to Earth, I realized that the purpose for human existence was to love. Love is our higher purpose. Now, the road back, after attaining the reward, the hero still needs to journey back to the ordinary world where he left from. And I feel that this image symbolizes beautifully the connection we establish with our visitors. And this is Theseus on his way into the labyrinth to slay the Minotaur. And once he slayed the Minotaur, he still needs to find his way back. So Ariadne is waiting for him at the entrance to the labyrinth and holding the other end of the string that he's holding in his left hand, and thus supporting his journey back. And I feel this is symbolizing beautifully the connection established with people in their own labyrinth. Resurrection will be the first stages of the person back to the ordinary world. And as Super Dude 21 says, I feel like I have been reborn. My entire psyche was pulled apart and then rebuilt, and I have survived. And the last stage of the hero's journey is the return with the elixir. And in the context of the work we do, which again is the work we do in musical events. So of course, there is a very clear limit to how far we can go with this spiral of integration, that one can obviously integrate this kind of powerful experiences for months and years after he experiences this. But we do have the ability to do the first steps of integration during the event, which mean we can encourage the person to write down his experience, and we discuss sometimes for hours and hours the experience we had together, which is also one of the first steps of integration. And we encourage people to express themselves artistically in whatever way they find useful, whether it's chanting, singing, painting, sculpturing, if they have what to sculpture with, but we're really encouraging artistic expression. Now, before I tell you a little bit more about SafeShore, I really want to acknowledge these two infinitely helpful sources of inspiration and guidance for us that since day one helped us make sure that we're covering all fronts and taking care of the smallest details. And until today, we're using them extensively in our volunteers training and more. And these are, of course, the Zendo Psychedelic Harm Reduction Training Manual and the Manual of Psychedelic Support, both of which, again, were infinitely helpful in establishing this project. So this is, of course, a sign pointing towards our dome in the festival. And here you can see the spaces we built in the last 2 years in this in Do Festival, which is a 6,000 people festival. And as you can see, we're doing our best to do it as cozy as possible and without too many colors, and we just want to make it cozy and clean. And on the upper part, you can see the zone earlier this year, and on the bottom, the space we built last year. And on the left, this is a space we built for us, the sitters, to really rest in between the shifts, and a kitchen with which we fed ourselves and the visitors. Now, a little bit about the team. So this is Igal, who is leading the project with me, and our team, as you can see, differs a bit from year to year, but we have here therapists from all fields of therapy, from Chinese medicine to transpersonal psychotherapy, art therapists, clinical psychologists, social workers with an expertise in addictions, somatic psychotherapists, and more and more. And here you can see one of our visitors joined the picture, and we didn't want to tell him not to join, so I censored him with one other sitter that was not in the time of taking the picture. So another thing I want to tell you about is holding space workshops, which we started facilitating this year. And they started as volunteers training for people who were about to support the psychedelic crisis that are happening in Midburn, which is the Israeli Burning Man. And then we realized that the tools that we give in these workshops and trainings, that they're really useful for any person to really give some mental first aid or to support mental or psychedelic crisis of people that he encountered during his life. So during this workshop, we explore things like compassionate listening and mindfulness and theoretical knowledge about spiritual emergency and psychedelic research. And I think one of the most beautiful things we're doing there is simulations of psychedelic crisis using playback theater and psychodrama. And this way we give people a bit of the experience of what really they're going to encounter. And it is pretty surprising how overwhelming for people it gets, even when there's no substance involved and when it's only simulation. These are some more pictures from the training earlier this month. And a little bit on our plans for the near and far future. So we're working these days on creating a spiritual emergence integration training program for therapists. So this is done with the intention to create a network of therapists that can really take the integration process further for people that we meet during parties, and to give some more tools for therapists on how to contact the experiences that are arising from the psychedelic and spiritual crises. We're doing our very first steps in promoting psychedelic harm reduction research by starting by conducting a very small-scale qualitative research next year as a part of my thesis. And of course, we collect data for the last 3 years on the intervention processes from the field. And in the longer run, we're planning on creating a permanent center to support psychedelic or spiritual crisis. And I really invite each and every one of you who might want to collaborate around creating more spaces like these anywhere around the world to contact us on the website or by email. And thank you very much.